You're listening to the Archaic Drum Podcast. In-depth conversations with great visionaries and free thinkers of today. Beat by beat, evolving self and society through ancient wisdom and emerging paradigms. With your host, James Benton.
Welcome to our first episode from our new podcast series, The Yage Tapes. We'll be in conversation with individuals who have had their lives transformed through working with the plant medicine ayahuasca. More and more are now traveling to South America to work in ceremony with native shamans and this particular plant. We hope that these conversations will both inspire and shed some light on this remarkable natural medicine which has been used by native tribes for millennia. We have with us today Emma Lucy Shaw. Emma is a Scottish-English visionary artist who lost both her parents at an early age and ended up homeless not long after. She stayed with friends, moving from place to place, and eventually set off to travel throughout Scandinavia, finding work and shelter when she was able. Her life took a dramatic turn after she journeyed to Peru to participate in ayahuasca ceremonies with shamans within the Amazon. She is now back in the UK, where she spends much of her time creating her art. Emma, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, Emma. So I understand that your life began to take a rather sharp turn when you were 15 at the sudden and unexpected passing of your father. Is that correct?
Yeah, when I was 15, I had a very nice childhood, and then suddenly my dad dropped dead at work when I just turned 15, and my life completely changed. And 2 years later, after he died, my mum developed a cough, and that turned into lung cancer. And then for about a year and a half, I watched her die in front of me. And yeah.
Wow. So you were 18, 19, and both parents gone.
Yeah, I just turned 20, and that's when my mum died. It's actually hung on somehow to my 20th birthday, and then, yeah.
Mm-hmm. How did you deal with that for yourself at the time, Emma?
Not very well. I drank a lot of alcohol and just completely lost myself in recreational culture. And after I was 15, I was put on antidepressants, which my mum wasn't happy about because she thought the grief of my father was natural. And I was on antidepressants for a year, and then I came off them because they didn't make me feel good. I had counselling as well, and none of these methods in our society help us, and especially with grief, when grief is natural. It's a process you need to be allowed to go into. In our culture, it's just a taboo, and they make you feel bad, and they don't bring up the person who died, and that really took my mind to dark places, not being allowed to grieve properly.
Mm-hmm. So you ended up staying with some friends. You had to leave your home, I understand.
Yeah, I didn't get on very well with my brother at the time, and I went and stayed with some friends, and it was just sofa surfing, different friends' sofas, basically. A year to the day after my mum died, I actually started university. In England, you can get a lot of grants, especially if you have orphan status. It's quite easy to get money, so that was my ticket out of the city I grew up in. And I went to university, and then after that, 3 years, I was back to being homeless again, and the same thing, just sofa to sofa.
And then you found a way to travel some, is that correct? You went to Scandinavia?
Yeah. I actually, when my graduation ceremony was, I was in Palestine, the West Bank, and I returned to England and I didn't have anywhere to live. And I was on a friend's sofa and I just looked online for jobs, but I needed accommodation and jobs. And there's a lot of hotel work all around Europe. Very little pay, but you get food and stuff. So I went to Scotland first, to the Highlands, and then all around Scandinavia, and then to England, the Lake District.
Mm-hmm. And I understand you went to Norway.
Yeah.
How was your experiences there? Was that helpful for you in any way in helping to integrate these difficult experiences?
Yeah, it was very good for me because I grew up in a city, quite a large city in England, and in the centre of the city. And I really left that behind, and it was just nature. I was in all these natural places with not many people, and I went off in the forest by myself, and I was able to quiet my mind. I mean, it was hard work, but it really helped me let go of the culture that I didn't really feel a part of ever in the first place.
Uh-huh. So you were primarily able to get more intimate with yourself,
Yeah,
and your feelings around these things.
and trees as well. I used to think I was talking to trees in my head and just connect to nature.
Wonderful. So you eventually heard about something called ayahuasca. Is that correct?
Yes, I heard it about ayahuasca 2 years after my mum died. It seems to be like 2 years, and the grief is really, I don't know, it was the same with my dad. It was really hard at that point, and I used to go on this conspiracy channel online, and it was always conspiracies about governments and war and corruption, but there was one episode about ayahuasca, and just straight away I knew that was for me. It was like 5 years later till I eventually got to an ayahuasca ceremony, but that was when I first heard about it.
Had you tried taking any other psychedelics before this?
I took acid a few months after my mum died, and it actually really helped me. It was like therapy compared to the pills they gave me in counselling sessions after my dad died. This acid allowed me to look down on my life and see two paths. I could stay in the city and probably have kind of a mundane and happy life, or I could follow my heart. I mean, that was very long ago and early in my psychedelic experiences, but already I knew there was something in this.
Mm-hmm. So you could go as far as to say that your experience with LSD was helpful for you in some way.
That was very helpful. Yeah.
So you did some research, I presume, on how to be able to best experience an ayahuasca ceremony. How did you go about that?
I did lots of research about places I could go. I discovered the whole kind of tourist trade in ayahuasca, and I found a place to go. And for the year, I knew I was going at the start of 2012. I found the place I was going to go to, and I didn't go until November 2012. So that year before, I stopped eating meat. I got really healthy, went on lots of walks, and I forgot to say this before, I started to do a lot of mushroom and magic truffle trips alone in dark rooms, which at first was very challenging for me because it's quite scary not being with anyone going into these places. But after, I think, 3 or 4 of those, I felt I was prepared as I could be for ayahuasca.
Yeah, I think perhaps it's good for some to prepare for what arrives with this plant. To familiarize oneself a bit with these other terrains that are available to us with these. Mm-hmm. So, Emma, exactly when was it that you made your trip down to Peru?
I went to the Amazon the 15th of November 2012, and I was there for 5 weeks.
And the ceremonies you participated in, you had spread those out over a longer period of time. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did volunteer kind of work exchange, so I got to stay on the retreat quite cheap if I helped clean and stuff. So I spread it out. I did 7 ayahuasca ceremonies and 2 San Pedro, and I spread it out over 7 weeks because at first the medicine was quite challenging, so I needed kind of sometimes a week break in between ceremonies.
By being able to stretch your ceremonies out over a longer period of time in that way, do you feel that was helpful for you in being able to integrate your experience?
Then yeah, then I needed time, and I also needed San Pedro in between the ayahuasca. That really helped me because ayahuasca is very visual for me, whereas San Pedro's it's more emotions and feelings, and it helped me kind of understand what I was learning in the ayahuasca ceremonies because it was so much information at first. I didn't really know what to do with it.
So the San Pedro is a cactus plant. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Which contains the compound mescaline. Is that right?
Yeah. Very similar to peyote, the same. Really.
It grows up in the higher regions of Peru, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's not the jungle regions, but a lot of the retreats now will offer San Pedro ceremonies as well.
So I fully realize these experiences are rather difficult to speak about in ways, and it's rather impossible to convey with any sort of accuracy what the experience is. That said, could you tell us a little bit about what happened for you in Peru?
Yeah. I had my first 4 ceremonies I found extremely challenging. The first ceremony, I drank the medicine and it was about up to 2 hours. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm doing quite well. I seem to be handling this. And then suddenly I was just transported into a different world. And it was just so visual and so many landscapes. And I just felt like I was just being thrown from place to place, like I had no control. It wasn't that scary, the first ceremony, but it was challenging just because I felt I had no navigation. The second ceremony, I started to go into my own demons and the stuff I went there in the first place to work on. I started to go into, so I'd have blissful experiences when the medicine would first start, but then I would go into stuff and I found it kind of hard to purge at first. I actually think it's an English cultural thing. The Americans, they could purge, but we're quite polite and quiet, and I think that restricted me a bit. My third ceremony, I shapeshifted into a cat, so I was, yeah, and I completely lost all human thoughts, and I turned into this cat. So by then I was learning to let go to the medicine, but I was still holding back, and I got a very clear message that I've got 4 tough ceremonies to get to, and then it will get easier. So by the time my 4th ceremony came, that was a horrific experience for me, but positive at the same time. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was my mum after she died, where she was trapped. She hadn't transcended. Her cancer treatments completely destroyed her quality of life. She was very scared of death, and that's what got me interested in alternative medicines in the first place, because I believe it can help people prepare for death. So I felt like I was my mum trapped in this place, and it was just so overwhelming. I'm quite a quiet person on psychedelics, but I was screaming. The shamans were by my side, but then after that ceremony, I really feel like I said goodbye to my mum properly, and I felt the grief that had been clinging on to me that should have been cleared. It was gone. And my favourite part with a lot of the ayahuasca ceremonies is after the ceremony, when you're talking to people about your experiences and the amount of love you will feel for each other. And people just held me. There was a local Peruvian woman, Cecilia. We didn't have a common language, but she knew it was about my mum, and she held me afterwards. And I mean, that's just as healing as the medicine itself, an environment where you can just go into your emotions with no shame. Yeah. And so, yeah, my first 4 were hard. And then after that, I could set an intention before the ceremony and I would be able to journey. I mean, it was still kind of challenging, but by my 7th ceremony, I was just journeying mainly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I finished that work. I left the jungle, but then I did more work September 2013 in Europe with ayahuasca. I did 3 nights in a row, and by the 10th ceremony, whatever I started in Peru, I finished there. I didn't give in to any fear. I just stayed in my heart, and I just navigated all of the realms, and I was able to create art during the whole ceremony and help others if they were in distress. And yeah.
Beautiful. So, as difficult and challenging that it ended up being for you, you don't have any regrets.
No.
And you're happy that you were given those experiences.
Happy, because definitely. I remember the shaman in Peru. He kind of laughed at me after my 4th ceremony, not in a nasty way, but he laughed, and it's like they do get easier. It's hard for everyone at first, and it gets easier. So I just always kept that in my head, and it does get easier.
Yes, it seems that once we've let go of some of these heavier energies during ceremony, that it not only allows our lives to get a bit easier, but also the ceremonies become easier on down the road if we carry on with this practice. So you completed your ceremonies in Peru, and you came back and found a way to continue with that on some level, and then you discovered something about yourself.
Yes, I've discovered that I'm an artist, which before I always liked creativity, but I had no real belief that I had anything to offer. I thought I liked some of the things I did, but that's all. And I'd always have pipe dreams with my art, and then I'd always give up. There was no drive there. And the second day in the jungle, I just started to draw pictures, and it hasn't stopped since that day. I just draw and paint constantly. And for the whole of 2013, I've taught myself art, because I'm not trained in art, but I've taught myself, and it's just flowing out of me. It's like ayahuasca unlocked my creativity, and she showed me my full potential, and I just kept going with it because I believe that this is a medicine. And I have seen some people that kind of give up. They've drank ayahuasca, but then they go back to their lives and they don't incorporate the lessons into their lives. But I think if you keep up with the lessons and your creativity, creativity is your own healing as well. And I think, coming back from the jungle, I displayed my art in London at the Breaking Convention.
Yeah, I've heard of that. And
that gave me confidence and belief even more that I was following a path with heart, and I had to keep going at it.
Mm-hmm. How was your experience there at the Breaking Convention conference, Emma?
It was really good. I got there early. I was really nervous before because I hadn't displayed my art. I only started calling myself an artist, and there was some well-known fishery artists there, and I was really nervous, but I got there early. I got the best spot for my art, and the feedback was just amazing, and people were really positive with my art and with my story. When I'd explain what happened, that would inspire people, and it was an amazing experience. And I got to see Graham Hancock, who was my childhood hero.
Great. Well, for those of our listeners who are unfamiliar with Graham Hancock, he's a great researcher and journalist who has brought much to light concerning many of our ancient mysteries, and his writings are well worth looking into. So, Emma Lou, you've stated that through your experiences with ayahuasca that you were able to fully embody your artistic expression. It appears to me, however, that the fundamental structure of society doesn't leave too much room for one to fully express themselves artistically. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially artistic expression that is natural, that's had no training. It's just completely just from the heart. It's very hard to get that out there and for that to be accepted in the art world. But because I'm very detached from society in my personal life, I'm not finding that a barrier to me personally because I'm not feeding any energy to that type of thought. I'm just doing it because I like it and it's getting out there by itself. But on the whole, our society is there's a certain art that they like, which I don't really think is art, in my opinion.
Do you have some vision, or is there a particular direction that you see your art going in, or do you just allow it to go where it wants to go?
But I personally think it's like I've downloaded mass amounts of information from working with the plant medicines, and I don't plan my art. I get a canvas or a piece of paper and I draw it. It sometimes feels like channeling. I can't really explain it very well. I just I don't plan and I just draw it and then these paintings appear and they all seem to have messages, whether it's anti-war on drugs or something in there. And I'm just trying to understand my art myself. It's still very new to me, but it just keeps coming. So I'm just going to keep downloading it.
Wonderful. You stated that today's culture made you sick in some way, and you came to the point to where you blamed that sickness upon yourself. Would you like to say something about that?
Yeah. Well, the grieving process in our culture is basically there's no grieving process. If someone dies, people don't mention their name, and not being allowed to grieve properly, everything got held up inside me. And from a very young age, I knew there was a lot of corruption in the culture we had. And I was always questioning things. But as I got my late teens, early 20s, I kind of started to think, well, everyone else seems to be coping. It just must be my own fault. It just must be me. And I started to blame myself and have a lot of self loathing for myself instead of culture, the culture system that we have not being a positive thing. Most people are unhappy in the world, in our culture. And I think it makes people sick. It certainly made me feel sick. And the more I drank ayahuasca, I saw that very clearly. I saw that I was drinking a medicine that was getting rid of everything that this society fed me to try and keep me in check.
It seems like that's exactly what it's trying to do sometimes, to keep us in sort of container of some
Yeah,
type. Huh?
keep us consumers and keeping the few rich and yeah.
Yeah, it's undeniably an unfair and unjust system we're dealing with here. However, there are times when I have some difficulty not believing that this growing interest in these entheogenic plants and their effects, which you have spoken about here for yourself, are not helping to shake some things up here on a rather profound level.
Definitely. I mean, I always study culture because of what happened to me, and I was kind of ripped out of my life and kind of on the road. I was always studying things around me. And with the ayahuasca trade, I did notice that it's mainly gringo Westerners,
Yeah.
which kind of made me realize, okay, the culture I'm from is sick. That's why there's so many of us drinking this medicine. And I think obviously there's like a revolution in nearly every country at the minute, and we're destroying nature on a mass scale. And I do believe that this is nature telling us to come back to nature, not fight it. And
Yeah.
I believe it's the intelligence higher than ourselves trying to reunite us with our real evolution.
Well, I think it would be a mistake not to at least consider something like that
Yeah.
as being possible. At the very least, I think that it would be a good idea if we worked at expanding our awareness a bit to try to get a bit clear as to what's exactly going on here for us all.
Yeah, definitely. I do believe post 2012, I think it is a new world now. Even if that's just a personal feeling I have, because I drank ayahuasca around the 21st of December 2012. So to me, it definitely felt like this is a new world. And before, when I was very lost in culture, I'd see the future as negative. I thought there was going to be some mass Third World War and we're all going to end up dead or whatever. But now the future, since working with the plant medicines, is very positive, and I do believe that these plant medicines will prevail. And I think we're on the path to something very beautiful.
Yeah, I think so as well. Imalu, are you still in contact with any of the others that you did your ceremonies with in Peru?
Yeah, I still talk to all of them because these people that might be strangers before a ceremony, you go through everything with them and then they become family and you just love them. You've never experienced stuff like that before for people. So, yeah, I talk to them all.
Imalu, do you have any plans to go back to the jungle anytime soon?
At the moment, I feel I've done my first wave of learning with ayahuasca. I definitely want to go back and work with them more, but I'm kind of being more called to iboga at the minute. So that's maybe that will be next. But I definitely want to get to Mexico, and maybe mushrooms are my number one spiritual tool, and I'd like to go into that more.
Mm-hmm.
For the moment, I'm very happy with my ayahuasca process, so I don't feel the need to do it anytime soon.
Are you connecting or collaborating with any other artist at the moment?
Yeah, I'm very loud with my kind of art, and I don't really care what people think, and I'm constantly sending it to other artists just to share it and get it out there. And I'm talking to a lot of visionary artists, and I've been invited to do a lot of work with many artists around the world. When I've got more money, I'm gonna go and do these opportunities because I think if we all get together, that could be very powerful.
Well, you have some fascinating creations. They're available at the moment to view on your Facebook page. Is that right?
Yeah, my Facebook page, Emma Lou Arts. My website's not up at the minute, so that's about my art.
Imalu, you stated something in a video that you had put up that resonated with myself quite a bit. You said that we have to be our own prophet. What does that mean to you, and how have you been your own prophet through all of this? What does that mean for you personally?
Um, just having complete love for myself, and not, I don't mean that in an ego way, just complete love for who and what I am and what I have to offer. And you realize with psychedelics that this is your dream, this is your reality, and you can do and be anything you want to be, as long as it's positive, of course. And I want to save my own world, so therefore I want to be my own prophet, my own messiah. And I believe if everyone has that attitude, I'm not trying to preach, but if everyone has love for themselves and strives to be the best they can be and just share their creativity and themselves, I think the world will be a very beautiful place.
Beautifully stated, Imalu. Wonderful. Yeah, it seems like that too often we give up our own power to some religion or institution or lock ourselves into some
Yeah.
particular belief system. It really astonishes me sometimes as to why so many choose to sacrifice their power and potential in this way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with religion, I have so much love for scripture and prophets, but I wasn't brought up Christian. England's not very religious, and I just spent a lot of time in Jerusalem,
Oh, really?
and I would just see religion as like a prescribed spirituality that kind of holds back on the real tools that will get you there. And yeah, it's just, especially the Vatican and Rome, it's like a vampire. It just feeds from people's energy and doesn't give them anything in return. Whereas psychedelics, it's you have your own defined experience. It's personal.
It's true, and oftentimes rather profound.
Yeah.
Imalu, what is your art to you personally? And is there any information or revelations that are coming to you through it at this time?
My art, like I said before, it sometimes feels like channeling, but I'm very aware that my art's very loud and in people's faces, and I'm very opposed to the war on drugs consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And I think my art will be able to break boundaries and talk to people, educate people that might be very scared of the word drug and just associate all plant medicines as just recreational drugs and hippies. I hope it will just explain to people that this is a very beautiful, spiritual, and healing thing. And that's what my art is. It's my own healing, but it's also, maybe I'm just a big dreamer, but I hope it can heal the world, because that's the healing I've got from ayahuasca. I want everyone to feel that. I think everyone deserves to have that experience in their life.
Agreed.
I know psychedelics aren't for everyone, but I do think some type of initiation ceremony with plants, I think culture, society needs that. Otherwise, it ends up very sick. All the witches, the healers in Europe were burnt. And then if you look at the history of Europe after all the medicine people were burnt, that's when we started to go around the world with empires and killing everyone and having no compassion for other people, and racism and everything came after our healers were killed. So I think it's time for us to go back and learn from cultures that have healers. I don't know if I went off topic on that question then, but that's
No.
what art is for me.
Glad you brought that up. This was nothing less than a horrific genocide that was committed against many great healers of that era.
Yeah. And art isn't something that you're taught at school. I think a lot of the art world is snobby, and I think it's just natural. Whatever it is if it's singing, poetry, it's natural and it should flow from you. If you don't like your own creativity, and if you stand back and you criticize it, then that's not art. Art is just natural, and it's from the heart, and anyone can do it.
Yeah, I think so. Imalu, what would you tell someone who is considering taking this medicine? Would you encourage them in any way to do it if they were thinking about it?
I don't like to preach to anyone. I think everyone has to follow their own path. But if you have an interest in ayahuasca, when I started to have an interest, I started to realize that was a calling. And following that calling, answering the psychedelic telephone was the best thing I ever did. Because I think, you can see with my art, I'm proof that this is medicine, this is good for you. And if you answer that call, however scary it might be, and however long it takes you to get to an ayahuasca ceremony, it will be the best thing you've ever done. Not just ayahuasca, all psychedelic natural medicines. They really help you all the shit that you don't need. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can swear.
No problem, Emma. Free, uncensored expression is welcome here.
Okay. But yeah, you should definitely follow it.
Well, before we part, is there anything else you'd like to share with us? Maybe not.
Um, I'd like to say to people that view these things as drugs and have a very negative mindset towards such activities, that you need to really open your mind, and that the attitude that these are just drugs and there's nothing positive in them is very racist, because there's tribes all around the world that carry on these traditions. And we, in our culture, before the Christianization, we also had our own shamanic ceremonies. And I hope people can really see through the war that it is, as others say, a war on consciousness. And these are medicines, they're natural, and they help you become imbalanced, and they help you enjoy this life, because that's what's life is about, enjoying it. It's not about being depressed the whole time.
Well, it could be that's one of the reasons that we're all here, is to discover how we can live and embody our source of happiness.
Yeah, and learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Emma Lucy Shaw, thank you for speaking with me here today.
Thank you for having me.
All the best to you on your new path and your artistic endeavors.
Thank you, and to you.
Thank you, Emma. Bye for now.
Bye.
If you'd like to join us for upcoming episodes of the Archaic Drum podcast, or receive updates on our website content in general, you can go to www.archaicdrum.com and sign our mailing list. We're also to be found on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Thanks so much again for joining us for the Archaic Drum podcast.